some of this movie comes from, you know, from me, sure. But it's not, I'm never going to be able to make a movie that doesn't. Even if I'm making a movie about the turn of the century, I think it's always going to be personal. It's just in the detail stuff. The horses in Sherilyn's bedroom with the ribbons on the wall, and you got sisters or you got a girlfriend that's, loves to ride horses and all this stuff. And those little details that you remember and loving to put those in a movie. I think, when I grew up in the Valley and I lived there, I was really embarrassed for the longest time that that's where I lived and that's where I grew up, because I knew I wanted to make movies. And I would look back to my favorite directors and think, okay, there's Howard Hawks, and boy, he served in the war, and there's Ernst Lubitsch, who escaped to Germany, and all these wonderful sort of things going on in their lives that you were supposed to bring to a movie, But I didn't have shit to bring. I was like, I'm from the fucking Valley, And I was really embarrassed about that for a long time, I guess, until one day I just woke up and said, well, I'm from the Valley, and I remember things like little plastic horses and the blue ribbon on the wall with the fucking girlfriend, or and I guess that's what I have to make movies about. It's really hard, I don't know, to get people to fucking pay attention to people talking. I don't know.
She's the best. She's a wonderful
But I don't blame it on the audience. I think a lot of people blame it on MTV audience style. I blame it on the storytelling, and the filmmakers are just getting lazy, and they're sort of buying into the MTV thing, or buying into condescending to an audience and structuring their movies in such a way so that if they want to have a moment where two people stop and talk, it's not really going to flow within the movie. It's all about how you tell the story, And there's just not very many good storytellers nowadays. LA Confidential is so fucking great, and that's all talk. I mean, it's all talk. It's just because the structure of it is just well told. It's set up to be that. It's set up that way. There was never any concern from New Line initially about the length of the movie, because when I sat down with Mike DeLuca, I had just come from a situation making my first movie where I'd gotten so royally fucked over that my back was up, and I was so paranoid, I thought what I have to do on my next movie is sit down with the guy who's going to pay for it and go through every single word and say, are you reading this? Have you really read the script? And I sat down with DeLuca and really came at him, and just because he was instantly the enemy, and I was just this paranoid freak and just saying, let me tell you something right now, buddy. It's going to be 3 hours long. Have you read this? See where it says the camera follows him? It's going to follow him, and it's going to be a 3-minute shot, and I'm not going to cut it. And I just came at him, and he was like, calm down. What the fuck is your problem? Relax. What you went through is not the normal thing, and I did calm down, and I trusted him enough to kind of calm down and go, you're right, but, let's just be really clear about it. I want to really map this movie out for you, because I don't want you to be surprised. I don't want to be fucked with in the editing room, and I just... if you like this movie, if you like this script, you're going to love the movie. But if you have problems with the script now, they're only going to get worse. And before I'm not going to change anything, so let's be really clear. So there was a real clarity between DeLuca and I about what the movie was. And I said, it's 3 hours long and it's NC-17. And he came back the next day and said, this is the one concession I will ever ask you to make in making this movie, is you got to pick one. So if it's going to cost $15 million, we got to make some money somewhere. And if it's NC-17, they can't stock it in Blockbuster, and they lose a lot of money in video returns. So I said, well, I'll take the challenge to make an R-rated movie and find a way to do that, and mapped out to him ways that I would try and do that. And he said, okay. But I said, the running time is the running time, and that's not going to change. So they're just happy that it's 20 minutes shorter than I said it would be. You know what? With good actors, you don't have to go through... You know what? Let me put it to you this way. If I hired an actor who said, what was my math grade in fourth grade, I wouldn't know what to say. I really wouldn't. C+, I guess. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? So I've never encountered actors like that, thank God, and I think that I'm not sure if they really exist or if that's just a rumor, but I've heard a lot about that. I have encountered a few people like that, but mainly they were extras. Or stand-ins who would wonder what their motivation is, and boy, I just can't provide it, You know, it's funny how much you talk to actors. You know, it's really just like, if you've written it well, you've done your job. You really have. And they get it. Good ones get it and just cast the right one. And then it's about putting the camera in the right place and accommodating how hard acting is with all the technical constraints of making a movie. You know what I mean? It's just being really sensitive to that. Like, yeah, it's fucking hard to act. It is hard. And it's even harder when there's a camera and you got to stop and start and stop and start. And you know, piecing up this sort of emotional flow, and because of the way it works making a movie, you know, different setups and different angles and different takes, and it's about sort of being a good dad, and just making sure they conserve their energy and their just being a fan, you know. That's to me what the director's job is. I don't really take pride a lot in my directing skills of actors. I take pride in my writing, you know what I mean? I just got lucky enough to have John Riley and Mark Wahlberg and Phil Hoffman and all these other people in the movie. Because because the script, everybody's not even like me as the director. It's like I'm there just to be the guy who's just maybe kind of fun to hang out with. The script is the director, do you know what I mean? And everyone was so cool with the script and saying the words that it was just like, it really was just making it, just doing that. It was just showing up to do the script. That's the way we all approached it. I make shot lists. I mean, a lot of it is pretty well planned out beforehand. A lot of it, actually. Just because it's that much easier then to get there and be more open to stuff, you know, as opposed to trying to figure it out, and then you're never going to figure it out. So I make shot lists beforehand. I mean, a lot of the most specific camera moves are written into the script. If they're in aid of storytelling, do you know what I mean? Or they're in aid of letting the studio know, don't panic when this comes in dailies and it's 4 minutes long, you know, making sure it's in the script, so it's like really making a note of it. This is going to be one long shot, you know. And also, too, if the actors are reading the script and preparing and they know, you know, if they haven't talked to me just whatever in the course of a day, they know the next day is going to be, oh, it's one of those big one long shot deals, and then they can sort of gear up for it that way. But I do make shot lists beforehand, and I don't know, I've been pretty lucky never having a conflict for how I saw a scene was going to be blocked, do you know what I mean, and shot, then getting there on the day with the actors, and then before I imposed my what I wanted to see on them, saying, show me what you would do, it's usually spot on, you know. It's usually, I've been very lucky, I guess. I've never run into a situation where an actor felt I was asking them to do anything unnatural or something like that, you know, to accommodate a camera move that I thought was important. And that's a tricky thing. I guess there's a problem for a lot of other people, but thank God I've never had that problem. This first sex scene coming up here was, you know, I mean, it's pretty well planned out, because that's like a set piece, you know what I mean? You know your set pieces, you know your chunks that you really have to plan out. Like, okay, I'm gonna fucking plan this motherfucker out. I can't wing it, and I don't want to go in with the vibe of just catch as catch can with something like that main set piece sex scene. And the same goes for like the Rahad Jackson firecracker scene. You don't wing it through something like that. I'm really proud of this scene, the way that it came together. I really like it. I really love watching Bill Macy run this scene. I think if you watch it, he's really the one who's running the show. And it's funny because the way I had written it is that Bert is a little more participatory in the scene. He's the one that comes over and gives them the directions to say, freeze 1 second, and I'm just going to change the angle. And I thought, as we were leading up to it, I thought, maybe that's not right. You know, maybe Bert should just sit there and we'll let Macy run the scene. And we got to the set that day, and Bert came to me and said, what if I just sat and Macy ran it? And I said, I'm on the same fucking page. Thank you. It's great. So it meant changing a couple sort of shots around that I had already planned on going to the stage. That's sort of a direct correlation back to what we were talking about before, which is sort of what you plan to do, and then when you get there on the day. And that meant that a couple shots had to kind of change around a little bit that I'd planned for, but very easy because I had such a pretty good plan of attack at the scene that it's really easy to kind of accommodate ideas that come up when you have a plan. It's a lot harder when you don't have a plan, because then you're just shooting right, left, up, down, everywhere else, and you can never, ever fix it in the cutting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But then again, when it came to the whole documentary sequence in the movie, that's just,
Right down there.
mainly it's just actors sitting down, but boy, there was no plan for that. There was no shot list for that. It was just like, it's going to be a documentary. We're going to approach it like a documentary and just shoot a bunch of shit and figure it out later. We have enough of a structure written down that we can always know that that will work. But I'm going to shoot hours and hours of stuff and see what we get, you know. I always loved close-ups in movies. The very first time where I saw a close-up that looked exactly like I wanted a close-up to look was in Silence of the Lambs. And it's in the sequence where James Gumb is down in the basement, you know, and he's to sort of see the close-up of his nipples and applying stuff to his lips and stuff. And I loved extreme close-ups for the longest time, but for some reason I always felt like no one's getting it exactly the way I want to see it, the way I want to see an extreme close-up. And I remember seeing Silence of the Lambs and go, that's what they should look like. That's, for some reason, that's what that should look like. That's what an extreme sort of close-up should look like. And they're hard. I don't know if some of the extreme close-ups here I got right, and I don't know, it's been a lot of time trying to get them right, and it's weird. And I finally found that the anamorphic zoom lens that we used was great for extreme close-ups, because everything would really shallow depth of field, and things would really kind of fall off. It was really hard to get focus on something, but it was kind of great the way things would fall out of focus beyond the one thing you wanted to look at. Like, you know, you can look at the needle, and you can get the needle in focus, but that record isn't going to be anywhere remotely in focus, and neither is the sort of blue cartridge, you know what I mean? But you can get the needle, or you pick something like that, and I kind of like that. Looks cool, I think. And there's something about, I have to say, there's something about, I don't know why, I don't know where this plan came from, but just visually something that came into my head is there would be a lot of situations of using extreme close-ups and then cutting to real wide shots. I don't know why, and I can't justify it, except that it felt right or seemed cool, but that was a kind of plan that comes into effect a couple times, and I don't know. No, I didn't choreograph this dance number. A guy named Adam Shankman did, and I told him, you know, I want to see all the standard 70s stuff. You know what I'm talking about. We know what we're talking about. But there's got to be a sort of traditional element to it, a sort of traditional Busby Berkeley element. And I don't want to do a lot of coverage. I just would love to be able to play this in one take, you know, like a lot of those musicals, you know. And I think just try to obey for the most part, obey the law of good old-fashioned filming a dance number musical, which is see them from head to foot, you know, most of the time, and do that. This tone change and stuff and jumping all around is attractive to me because I was never so self-conscious about it, because I think it was just a plan going into this movie, like, okay, this is gonna be a big, sprawling epic. It's gonna be long. I am writing this movie for myself. I am not gonna write this movie and pretend that it's ever gonna get made. I'm really gonna approach it that way. And I was writing it at a time, really writing what you see now at a time where I didn't fucking care. I didn't care. I'd had my first movie taken away from me, and I was just in, fuck it, I'm going for it mode, you know? And that's probably why it's so long, you know, is because I was really just entertaining myself, and I might have lucked on a good way to do it, you know, a good way to do movies, at least for me, and right now in this moment, feeling like maybe that's the best place to be coming from. And so these tone changes are just a result of me entertaining myself and telling the story in a way that I think would be interesting, you know, and kind of, I don't know, it's always funny the way you hear stories, or if you hear a really good story, your friend comes to you and tells you a great story, you know, about this funny thing that happened to him. Usually the best ones are just full of insane tone changes. Like, it starts out and it's real simple, and then it gets incredibly complicated, and then it turns out that his mother died, and then it turns out that his dog died the same day, but his car broke down, and then it's funny for that, and you know your friend. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but that's kind of, isn't that the way most stories go, is that they're just sort of, they're all over the map. Those seem to be the best stories, and I kind of felt like this will be one that is all over the map, and I want 80 actors in this movie, and I know it's going to be long, and I'm freed up to just go for it. So I like those tone changes, you know. I mean, my favorite movies are like Sunrise and Shoot the Piano Player, that are all about like going, and Something Wild too, you know, dead serious to side-splittingly funny. And I don't know, it's great in theory. I guess it's kind of hard to do. I don't people say it's hard to do, but I don't know. I didn't. If you're on par and you're doing your job and you're just telling that story, it's gonna feel okay. You can switch gears, you know. I mean, you can do it.